The sound of a flatline was the loudest silence in the world. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. Isabella Hayes didn't look at the clock. She didn't look at the nurses peeling off their latex gloves, their faces gray with exhaustion. She only looked at the man standing in the doorway of the trauma room. He was covered in soot and dried blood, held back by 2 security guards. "You chose him," the man whispered. His voice was broken, like glass grinding in a disposal. "You chose the boy. You let her die." Isabella pulled her surgical mask down. The air in the ER smelled of antiseptic and copper. "Sir, your wife's injuries were catastrophic. We had seconds. I had to make a decision based on survivability." "You played God," he screamed, his knees buckling. "You looked at her, and you looked at my son, and you let her bleed out." Isabella turned away. Her hands were shaking. She hid them in the pockets of her scrubs. She walked out of the trauma room, past the sobbing man, past the sympathy in her supervisor's eyes. "Go home, Bella," the charge nurse said softly, touching her shoulder. "Take a few days. That's an order." Isabella didn't argue. She grabbed her coat and walked out into the biting Oregon cold. An hour later, she wasn't home. She was driving. The highway was a ribbon of black ice winding up into the Cascade Mountains. The heater in her old sedan rattled, fighting a losing battle against the blizzard raging outside. She shouldn't be here. The roads were closed, but the silence of her empty apartment was worse than the storm. She needed to feel something other than guilt. She needed the numbness of the cold. "You played God." The man's voice echoed in her head, louder than the wind howling against the windshield. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered to the empty car. Suddenly, the steering wheel jerked violently to the left. Isabella gasped, slamming on the brakes. Bad move. The tires locked. The world spun, a kaleidoscope of headlights, swirling snow, and dark pine trees. Crunch. The impact wasn't loud. It was a dull, sickening thud as the car slid off the road and slammed sideways into a massive oak tree. The airbag didn't deploy. Isabella's head cracked against the side window. Darkness swallowed her for a second. Then, the cold woke her up. The window was shattered. Snow was already drifting into the cabin, dusting her lap like powdered sugar. Isabella groaned, touching her temple. Her fingers came back wet. Blood. "Okay," she breathed, her breath pluming in the freezing air. "Okay, assess, move." She kicked the jammed door open and tumbled out into the snow. The wind hit her like a physical blow, stealing the heat from her body instantly. She was in the middle of nowhere, no cell service, no passing cars. She stood up, swaying, and that was when she heard it. A whimper. It wasn't the wind. It was low, pained, and distinctly human. Adrenaline, the nurse's drug of choice, flooded her veins. She ignored the throbbing in her head. "Hello!" she screamed over the gale. "Is someone there?" Another sound to her left, down the embankment toward the tree line. Isabella scrambled down the slope, slipping on hidden ice, tearing her scrub pants on thorns. She pushed through a thicket of frozen bushes and froze. There, curled beneath the overhang of a granite boulder, was a child. He couldn't have been more than 7 years old. He was wearing nothing but tattered remnants of a shirt. His skin was pale, almost translucent blue against the white snow. "Oh my God," Isabella gasped. She dropped to her knees, ripping off her heavy winter coat. She wrapped it around the boy, pulling him into her arms. He was ice cold, dead cold. "Come on, stay with me," she commanded, her voice shaking. She checked his pulse. It was slow, terrifyingly slow. Thump, pause, thump. She lifted him. He was surprisingly heavy, dense muscle and bone. She looked for injuries and gasped. His shoulder was a mess of torn flesh. It looked like he had been mauled by a bear, but the bite radius, it wasn't an animal. The teeth marks were human. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, horror gripping her throat. She couldn't get him back up the slope to the car. It was too steep. But she remembered passing a hunter's blind, a small, abandoned cabin about a quarter-mile back. "Hold on," she told the unconscious boy. "I've got you. I won't let you die. I won't lose another one." The cabin was little more than rotting wood and drafty windows, but it was shelter. Isabella kicked the door open and laid the boy on the dusty floorboards. It was freezing inside. She needed body heat, immediately. She stripped off her wet scrubs, leaving on her thermal undershirt and leggings. She pulled the boy against her, wrapping her coat and an old moth-eaten blanket she found in the corner around both of them. She pressed her body against his back, trying to transfer every ounce of her warmth into him. "Wake up," she murmured into his matted dark hair. She rubbed his arms vigorously. "Come on, sweetheart, fight." Minutes passed. The wind howled outside, rattling the door hinges. Then, a heat began to radiate from him. It wasn't normal. It didn't come on gradually. It surged. One second he was freezing, the next, he was burning up. Isabella pulled back slightly, checking his wound. She blinked. She blinked again. The jagged, tearing wound on his shoulder, the edges were knitting together. Right before her eyes, the flesh was bubbling, sealing itself shut with invisible stitches. "What the hell?" she breathed. The boy gasped. His back arched off the floor. He spun around in her arms, his eyes snapping open. They weren't human eyes. They were liquid gold, glowing with an inner light that illuminated the dark cabin. The pupils were vertical slits. Isabella scrambled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who are you?" The boy looked at her. He didn't look 7 anymore. He looked ancient. He sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring. He looked at the blood on her temple. "You," the boy rasped. His voice was a growl. "You smell like the remedy." "I'm a nurse," Isabella stammered, her medical training warring with her fear. "I'm here to help you." "Run," the boy said. "What?" "He's coming. My father. He thinks I'm dead." The boy grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. "If he finds you with me, run." Before Isabella could answer, the boy screamed. His bones cracked, loud, wet snaps that echoed in the small room. "Oh, God, you're seizing!" Isabella lunged forward to stabilize him. "No," the boy roared. His jaw unhinged, his face elongated. Dark fur burst through his skin like grass through fast-forwarded film. His scream turned into a snarl. Isabella fell back onto her elbows, paralyzed with shock. In the place of the boy, a massive silver wolf cub stood on the floorboards. It was the size of a Great Dane, panting heavily, its golden eyes locked on hers. It didn't attack. It whined, nudging her hand with a wet, hot nose. Isabella stared at the creature. Logic told her to run. Instinct told her to freeze. But her heart did something strange. It slowed down. A weird calmness washed over her. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched the silver fur between the wolf's ears. You're the boy," she whispered. The wolf blinked slowly. Then the sound came. A howl. It started low and deep, vibrating through the floorboards of the cabin, shaking the dust from the ceiling. It was followed by another, and another, a chorus of monsters in the dark. The silver wolf cub bristled, standing over Isabella protectively, baring its teeth at the door. Heavy footsteps crunched on the snow outside, not human footsteps, something heavy, something massive. A voice, deep as the earth and cold as the grave, spoke from right outside the thin wooden door. "I can hear your heart beating, little human. Open the door, give me what is mine, and I might let you live." Isabella didn't move. She couldn't. The voice outside triggered a primal alarm in her brainstem. It wasn't just a threat, it was a command. It vibrated in her teeth. The silver wolf Asher. She assumed growled low in his throat. He pressed his flank against her thigh, a solid wall of heat and muscle. He was trembling, not from cold, but from fear. "Go away," Isabella yelled. Her voice cracked, but she forced the volume up. "I have a wounded child in here. I'm a medical professional." Silence outside. Then, a low, dark chuckle. "A child," the voice mused. "Is that what you see?" Bang. The door didn't just open, it disintegrated. It flew off its hinges, splinters raining into the room. The wind swirled in, bringing snow and a man. He had to duck to enter. He was huge, well over 6'4", with shoulders that spanned the width of the door frame. He wore a black tactical coat that hung open, revealing a shirt stretched tight over a chest of granite. His hair was black as pitch, wet with melted snow, falling over eyes that were the color of a storm cloud gray, swirling and utterly merciless. Cale Donovan, the Alpha. Isabella scrambled to her feet, putting herself between the man and the wolf cub. She grabbed a rusted fireplace poker from the floor, brandishing it like a sword. "Stay back," she shouted. The man stopped. He looked at the poker. He looked at her. Then, his gaze shifted to the silver wolf cowering behind her legs. The man's expression shattered. For a microsecond, the monster vanished, replaced by a father looking at a ghost. "Asher," he breathed. The wolf whined. Cale took a step forward, his hand outstretched. "My son, come here." Isabella swung the poker. "I said stay back. Look at him. He's terrified of you." Cale stopped, his eyes snapping back to Isabella. The gray irises darkened to black. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You have 3 seconds to lower that weapon," Cale said softly. 1. "He has defensive wounds," Isabella spat out, her fear turning into defensive rage. "He has human bite marks on his shoulder. He was freezing to death. If you're his father, you did a hell of a job." Cale went very still. "Bite marks." 2, he counted. "I saved his life," Isabella cried. "I found him in the snow. I warmed him. I don't care how big you are. I'm not letting you hurt him again." Cale moved. He was a blur. 1 second he was by the door. The next he was in front of her. He didn't strike her. He caught the poker mid-swing with one hand, ripping it from her grip and tossing it aside like a toothpick. With his other hand, he grabbed Isabella by the throat. He didn't squeeze. He just pinned her against the rough wooden wall, lifting her until her toes barely touched the floor. Isabella gasped, clawing at his wrist. His skin was burning hot. Cale leaned in, his face inches from hers. She could smell him, an overwhelming scent of pine, rain, and something darker, like musk and ozone. It was intoxicating. It made her head swim. "You think I hurt him," Cale snarled, his lips brushing against her ear. "I would burn the world to ash for that boy. Do not test me, human." "Then why is he scared?" Isabella choked out. Cale pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. He paused. He frowned. He leaned closer, inhaling deeply at the hollow of her neck. His pupils dilated. His grip on her throat loosened, his thumb caressing her pulse point. The aggression in his face melted into confusion, and something else, hunger. "What are you?" he whispered. "Why do you smell like that?" "Like what?" she gasped. "Like peace," he murmured. "Like home." From behind them, the wolf cub barked, a sharp warning sound. Cale snapped out of his trance. He dropped Isabella. She slid down the wall, coughing. Cale knelt before the wolf. "Asher, shift, now." The wolf whined, shaking his head. "Asher," Cale's voice was gentle now, but commanding. "Show me the wounds. I can't help you if you stay in the fur." The wolf squeezed his eyes shut, a sickening crack of bone, and the boy was back, shivering and naked on the floor. Kael ripped off his expensive coat and wrapped it around his son. He pulled the collar down to inspect the shoulder. When he saw the bite mark, a growl ripped from Kael's chest that shook the cabin's foundation. Rogues! They injected him! Isabella crawled forward, her nurse instincts overriding her terror. Injected him with what I saw the wound healing, but it stopped. He has a fever. Kael looked at her. The intensity was back, but the murder was gone. Wolfsbane mixed with silver nitrate. It keeps us from healing. It kills the wolf first, then the man. He scooped Asher up into his arms as if he weighed nothing. We have to go. Now. He needs a hospital, Isabella said, standing up on shaky legs. A hospital can't fix this, Kael said. He walked to the door. He stopped and looked back at her. You saved him. I did. Then you're coming with us. Excuse me. You touched him, Kael said, his eyes sweeping over her body in a way that made Isabella's skin prickle with heat. You have his scent on you. And yeah, you have mine now. If I leave you here, the rogues will track you. They'll kill you just to see if you know anything. Isabella stared at the storm outside. I have a life, a job. Not tonight, you don't, Kael said. Tonight, you belong to the pack. The ride was a blur. Kael had a massive black SUV waiting on the road. He drove like a maniac, navigating the treacherous ice with supernatural reflexes. Isabella sat in the back with Asher, keeping pressure on his wound. The boy was delirious, mumbling about the witch and the curse. They arrived at a gate hidden deep in the forest. It opened automatically. Behind it wasn't a cabin, but a fortress. Stone walls merged with the cliffside, reinforced with steel and glass. It was modern, expensive, and intimidating. Kael parked and carried Asher into the main hall. People beautiful, athletic people rushed to meet them. Get Marcus! Kael roared. A man with glasses and a lab coat sprinted down the stairs. Alpha, you found him. They rushed Asher into a medical bay that rivaled the trauma center at Isabella's hospital. Isabella stood in the doorway, hugging herself. She felt small, dirty, out of place. You, the doctor, Marcus, pointed at her. Who is she? She found him, Kael said, watching his son being hooked up to monitors. She stabilized him. Marcus looked at Isabella, his eyes narrowing. He walked over to her, holding a tablet. Did you touch the wound? Yes, I tried to clean it, Isabella said. Marcus grabbed her hand. He didn't shake it. He turned it over, palm up. What are you doing? Isabella tried to pull away, but he held fast. Alpha, look at this, Marcus said, his voice trembling. Kael walked over. He loomed behind Isabella, his chest brushing against her back. The heat coming off him was suffocating. He looked down at her hand. There, on her fingertips, faintly glowing under the fluorescent lights, was a residue. It wasn't blood. It was a soft, pulsating, blue light. The silver nitrate, Kael murmured. It's dissolving. She neutralized it, Marcus whispered. He looked at Isabella with wide, terrified eyes. She didn't use medicine. Alpha. She used contact. That's impossible, Kael said. His voice was low, dangerous. Only a thorn can neutralize silver poisoning. A what? Isabella asked, panic rising in her chest. I'm a Hayes. Isabella Hayes. Marcus quickly swabbed her cheek with a collector before she could react. He jammed it into a machine on the counter. Run it, Kael ordered. I'm not a dog, Isabella snapped. You can't just run my DNA. If you are who I think you are, Kael said, grabbing her shoulders and spinning her around to face him, then you are the most dangerous thing in this room. His hands on her shoulders were heavy, possessive. He stared down at her, searching her face. He looked at her lips, then back to her eyes. The tension was thick, electric. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the pull of a magnet to steel. Isabella's breath hitched. She should be fighting him, but all she wanted to do was lean into that heat. Beep! The machine on the counter chimed. Marcus looked at the screen. He went pale. He dropped the tablet. Alpha? Marcus choked out. It's a match. 99.9%. Cale's grip on Isabella's shoulders tightened, almost to the point of pain. A match for what? Isabella whispered. Cale looked at her, his expression a mix of awe and horror. Morgana Thorne, Cale said, the witch who cursed my bloodline 300 years ago. He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear, sending shivers cascading down her spine. Congratulations, Isabella. You're not just a nurse. You're the reason my son is dying, and you are the only one who can save him. The silence in the medical bay was heavy, suffocating. Isabella pulled her arm back from Marcus's grip, rubbing her wrist. Cursed, you're insane. I'm a nurse from Portland. My biggest problem yesterday was a double shift and a flat tire. It wasn't a flat tire, Cale said. His voice was a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. He stepped closer, invading her personal space again. The heat radiating from him was distracting, almost magnetic. You crashed because fate dragged you here, or maybe it wasn't fate at all. Alpha, Marcus interrupted, his voice urgent. He pointed at the monitors. We don't have time for history lessons. Asher's heart rate is dropping. The silver nitrate is binding to his bone marrow. If we don't flush it out, he won't last the hour. Isabella looked at the boy. Asher was convulsing slightly, black veins spiderwebbing up his neck from the wound. The sight overrode her fear. The nurse took over. What do you need? She asked, her voice steady. We need a transfusion, Marcus said, looking at Cale nervously. But not standard blood. We need compatible magical blood to neutralize the toxin. If she really is a thorn, then her blood is the antidote. Cale finished. He looked at Isabella. It wasn't a request. It was a challenge. Will you do it? Isabella looked at the needle Marcus was prepping. It was thick, silver, and looked more like a medieval torture device than medical equipment. I'll do it, she said. But not for you, for him. They didn't use a hospital bed. Marcus insisted on the transfer chair, a heavy, leather chair engraved with runes that hummed with faint energy. Isabella sat down, rolling up her sleeve. Her hands were shaking. Cale noticed. He didn't say a word. He simply dragged a stool over and sat directly in front of her. He took her trembling hand in his large, rough ones. His skin was calloused, warm, and incredibly grounding. Look at me, Cale commanded softly. Don't look at the needle. Isabella locked eyes with him, up close. His eyes were a storm of gray and silver. She could see the flecks of gold near the pupil. She could smell that scent again, rain and pine flooding her senses, calming her nervous system in a way that shouldn't be possible. This is going to hurt, Cale murmured. He brought her knuckles to his lips, brushing them lightly. It was an intimate, shocking gesture. I need you to stay with me. Don't pass out. I see blood every day, Isabella whispered, her breath hitching as his lips grazed her skin. I don't pass out. This isn't just blood. Isabella, it's magic. Marcus slid the needle into her vein. Isabella gasped. It didn't feel like a pinch. It felt like someone had poured liquid nitrogen into her arm. The cold shot up her shoulder and straight into her chest. Breathe, Cale ordered. He squeezed her hand, anchoring her. As the blood began to flow through the tube toward Asher, the room changed. The tube didn't fill with red. It glowed iridescent green. Incredible, Marcus whispered. Isabella felt a tugging sensation behind her navel. Her vision blurred. The edges of the room darkened, leaving only Cale's face. Cale, she slurred. Something's wrong. Stay with me, Cale growled. He stood up, leaning over her, cupping her face with both hands. Focus on my voice. Focus on me. A surge of energy backlash hit her. Isabella arched her back. a cry tearing from her throat. Cale didn't hesitate. He pressed his forehead against hers. "Give it to me," he whispered roughly. "Push the pain to me. I can take it." And he did. Isabella felt the agony drain out of her, siphoned away by the alpha's touch, in its place. A strange warmth bloomed. It was intimate, deeper than skin. She felt his heartbeat syncing with hers. Thump, 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 thump. Across the room, Asher gasped. The black veins on the boy's neck receded instantly, chased away by the glowing green light of Isabella's blood. His breathing evened out. The color returned to his cheeks. Isabella slumped forward, exhausted. She would have fallen off the chair if Cale hadn't caught her. He scooped her up against his chest, burying his face in the crook of her neck. For a moment, nobody moved. Cale held her tighter than necessary, his nose brushing her hair, inhaling deeply. "He's stable," Marcus announced, his voice filled with awe. "Alpha, look at the boy." Cale turned, still holding Isabella. Asher was sleeping peacefully, but there was a faint, green tether of light connecting his chest to Isabella's. "What is that?" Cale demanded, his voice sharp. "A bond," Marcus said, cleaning his glasses nervously. "She didn't just give him blood. She gave him life essence. It's a maternal bond. It's rare, usually. It only happens between a mother and pup." Cale went rigid. He looked down at Isabella, who was half asleep in his arms. His expression was a war zone of emotions, gratitude, possessiveness, and a dark, burning jealousy. "She isn't his mother," Cale growled. "Biologically, no," Marcus said, "but magically, she is now." Isabella woke up in a room that smelled like expensive linen and sandalwood. It wasn't the medical bay. It was a bedroom suite, larger than her entire apartment. She sat up, dizzy. The memories rushed back. The crash, the wolf, the blood. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was tall, with sharp features and a tablet tucked under her arm. This was Marin Cross, the pack beta. "You're awake," Marin said briskly. "Good. Cale wants you in the war room. Now." "I need to see Asher," Isabella said, swinging her legs out of bed. "Asher is sleeping and guarded by 3 warriors. He's safe." Marin said. Her tone softened, just a fraction. "You saved the heir. The pack thanks you. But that doesn't mean we trust you." Isabella stood up. She was wearing a silk shirt that wasn't hers. It hung to her knees. "Where are my clothes?" "Ruined. Wear this." Marin tossed her a pair of leggings and a sweater. 10 minutes later, Isabella was led through the stone corridors of the fortress. They passed wolves, men, and women in human form who stopped and stared at her. They sniffed the air as she passed, their eyes tracking her movement. They entered a large circular room dominated by a wooden table. Cale was there. So was Marcus. And a woman who looked old enough to be carved from the mountain itself, Elder Vera. But Isabella's eyes were drawn to the corner. A man was tied to a chair. He was beaten, bloody, and conscious. "Isabella," Cale said. He didn't turn around. He was staring at the prisoner. "Come here." Isabella walked to his side. Cale's hand drifted to the small of her back, resting there possessively. It felt natural. Too natural. "Do you recognize him?" Cale asked. Isabella looked at the prisoner. He had a snake tattoo on his neck. "No," she said. "This is Victor Frost," Cale said, his voice devoid of emotion. "He's the one who injected Asher with poison. He's the one who left my son to die in the snow." Isabella felt a surge of cold rage. "Why?" she asked the man. Victor spat blood on the floor. He looked at Isabella, then at Cale. "Because the line must end. The curse must be fulfilled." "Who hired you?" Cale roared. The sound was terrifying. He slammed his fist onto the table, cracking the wood. A rogue doesn't get access to military-grade silver nitrate without help. Who gave it to you? Victor smirked. You're looking for an enemy outside the walls, Alpha, but the rot is inside. It's always inside. Victor's eyes darted to the side. Just for a second, he looked at Elder Vera. Before Cale could react, Victor bit down hard, a crunch. Foam bubbled at his lips. Cyanide, Marcus shouted, rushing forward. It was too late. Victor seized and went limp. Dead. Damn it! Cale swiped a stack of maps off the table. He turned, his chest heaving, and looked at the room. Someone in this fortress helped him. Someone wanted my son dead. His eyes landed on Isabella. And until I find out who, Cale said, stepping closer to her until she had to tilt her head back to see him. You aren't going anywhere. You are the only leverage I have against fate. I'm a guest, Isabella said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the wall of muscle looming over her. Not a prisoner. Cale leaned down. His hand slid from her back to her waist, pulling her flush against him. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her that made her toes curl. You, Cale whispered, his voice rough with a dark promise, are neither. You are mine, and I keep what is mine. Isabella spent the next 2 days in a golden cage. She was allowed to roam the fortress, but never alone. 2 guards shadowed her every step. She spent most of her time in the medical bay with Asher. The boy was recovering miraculously. The bond between them was palpable. If she left the room, he would wake up crying. If she sat by his bed, his vitals stabilized. It was terrifying. She loved this child. She had known him for 48 hours, and she would jump in front of a train for him. That wasn't science. That was magic. But while Asher slept, Isabella's mind worked. It wasn't a flat tire. Cale's words from the transfusion haunted her. On the 3rd night, the fortress was quiet. A blizzard was raging outside again, locking them in. Isabella couldn't sleep. She wandered down to the library, her guards trailing a respectful distance behind. She saw light under the door of Cale's private office. The door was ajar. Isabella signaled the guards to wait. They hesitated but obeyed. She was the Alpha's favorite, after all. She pushed the door open. The office was empty. Cale must have stepped out. On the massive mahogany desk, a holographic display was humming. It was a map, a detailed topographic map of the Cascade Mountains. Isabella walked over. She knew she shouldn't, but curiosity was a physical itch. She looked at the map. There was a red line tracing a path up the highway, her path. And there was a timestamp. Subject Isabella Hayes. Tracking initiated 04:00 p.m. Crash simulation execute 02:15 a.m. Isabella froze. The air left her lungs. Crash simulation execute. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad weather. She tapped the file. A video log opened. It was Cale, speaking to a woman with purple hair, Sienna, the tracker witch. She's the one, Cale said in the video. He looked tired, desperate. The other descendants are dead. She's the last chance. So we just grab her? Sienna asked. No, Cale replied. She has to choose to save him. The prophecy says the blood must be given freely. If we kidnap her, the magic won't work. We have to create a situation. A crash. Disable her brakes, Cale ordered. Guide her off the road near the cabin. Make sure she finds him. Isabella backed away from the desk. Her hand covered her mouth. Tears pricked her eyes, not of sadness, but of betrayal. He crashed my car, she whispered. He almost killed me. I calculated the impact, a voice said from the shadows. You were never in mortal danger. Isabella spun around. Cale was standing by the bookshelf. He was holding a tumbler of whiskey. He didn't look apologetic. He looked tired. You calculated, Isabella shouted. She grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from the desk and hurled it at him. Cale caught it effortlessly, setting it down on a shelf. "Isabella, listen. You cut my brakes." She advanced on him, poking him hard in the chest. "You manipulated everything. My sister died in a car crash. Kale, do you know what that trauma is like? And you used it." Kale caught her finger, then her hand. He pulled her close, ignoring her struggle. "I knew about your sister," he said gravely, "and I hated using that against you. But look at the alternative. My son was dying. I had days left. If I had walked up to you in the hospital and said, 'Hi, I'm a werewolf king. Please come bleed for my son,' would you have come?" "I might have." "No." Kale shook his head. "You would have called the police or the asylum, and while we argued, Asher would have died." He stepped closer, backing her against the desk. His hips pinned her there. The anger in the room was mixing with that undeniable, frustrating attraction. "I am a monster, Isabella," Kale murmured, looking down at her lips. "I never claimed to be a hero. I did what a father had to do. I wrecked your car. I stole your life. And if I had to do it again to save him, I would." Isabella stared up at him. He was brutal, he was honest, and God help her, he was devastatingly beautiful in the dim light. "I hate you," she breathed. "Good," Kale whispered. He lowered his head, his nose brushed against hers. "Hate is passion. I can work with hate." His lips hovered millimeters from hers. She could feel the heat of his breath. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted to slap him. She was trembling, her hands gripping the lapels of his shirt. "Kiss me," Kale challenged softly, "or kill me. But make a choice." Isabella's heart hammered like a trapped bird. She opened her mouth. "Father." The cry shattered the moment. Kale pulled back instantly, the predator mask vanishing. Asher. Asher was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He looked pale again. He was wearing oversized pajamas, looking small and frightened. "Don't fight," Asher whimpered, tears streaming down his face. "Please, she's leaving. Isn't she? Everyone leaves because of me." Isabella shoved Kale aside. She ran to the boy, dropping to her knees. "No, baby, no," she cooed, pulling him into a hug. "I'm not leaving." Asher buried his face in her neck. "But Father made you mad. I heard him. He did bad things." Isabella looked up at Kale. The alpha looked devastated. He stood there, powerful and helpless, watching the woman he tricked comfort the son he would die for. Isabella made a decision, not for Kale, but for the boy clinging to her. "Your father made a mistake," Isabella said softly, stroking Asher's hair. "But we're going to fix it. I'm staying, Asher, until you're well. I promise." Kale let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. Isabella glared at him over Asher's shoulder. "This isn't over," her eyes said. Suddenly, the front doors of the fortress burst open down the hall. Shouting echoed through the stone corridors. Marin ran into the office, looking breathless. "Alpha, we have a problem." "I have enough problems, Marin," Kale growled. "Not like this," Marin said. She stepped aside. Sienna, the purple-haired witch from the video, stumbled in. She was covered in snow and scratches. She looked terrified. "Kale," Sienna gasped. "We have to move the girl. We have to hide Isabella." "Why?" Kale demanded, stepping forward to shield both Isabella and Asher. Sienna looked at Isabella with wide, haunted eyes. "Because I found the other two Thorn descendants," Sienna whispered. "The ones we thought died of natural causes." "What about them?" "They didn't die naturally," Sienna said. "They were drained, hunted, and whoever killed them just crossed the perimeter of Moonstone." She pointed a shaking finger at Isabella. "They know she's here, and they aren't coming to break the curse. Kale, they're coming to make sure it never ends." The atmosphere in Moonstone Fortress shifted from cautious curiosity to suffocating paranoia. Security was no longer tight. It was absolute. Every corridor had a guard. Every window was shuttered. Isabella couldn't walk from her bedroom to the kitchen without a phalanx of warriors flanking her. But the real tension wasn't in the hallways. It was between Isabella and Kael. Since the revelation of the car crash, they danced around each other like two stars on a collision course. There was anger, yes, but beneath the anger was a current of attraction so thick it made the air hum. Isabella was in the Great Hall, sitting on a rug with a dozen packed children. She had started an impromptu reading circle to keep them calm during the lockdown. Asher was sitting right beside her, his head resting on her knee, his little hand clutching the hem of her sweater. Kael stood on the balcony above, watching. He always watched. And then, Isabella read from the storybook, her voice melodic. The dragon realized he didn't need to burn the village. He just needed a friend. The children giggled. Isabella smiled, brushing a stray hair from her face. Thwip! A soft whistling sound cut through the laughter. It happened in slow motion. Isabella saw a flash of silver in the air, a small feathered dart, flying from the shadows of the upper mezzanine, aiming straight for her neck. She didn't have time to scream. But Kael did. A roar shattered the peaceful scene. A massive blur of black dropped from the balcony above. Kael didn't shift. There wasn't time. He landed in front of Isabella, a human shield of muscle and rage. Thud. The dart didn't hit Isabella. It buried itself deep into Kael's shoulder. Kael! Isabella screamed, dropping the book. The alpha stumbled back, crashing into her. He was heavy, dead weight. His legs gave out instantly. Clear the room, Marin's voice rang out, commanding the chaos. Get the children out, lock down the upper levels. Isabella didn't look at the guards. She rolled Kael onto his back. His face was already gray, sweat beading on his forehead. He gripped her wrist, his eyes unfocused. Did it hit you? He rasped, his teeth gritted in agony. No, you idiot! It hit you, Isabella yelled, tearing his shirt open. The skin around the dart was turning a necrotic purple. Wolfsbane, highly concentrated. Don't let them take you, Kael choked out. His eyes rolled back in his head. Help me, Isabella shouted at the warriors. Get him to the medical bay, now. 3 hours later, the crisis had stabilized, but the fear remained. Kael was lying in the infirmary bed, shirtless. His chest was wrapped in bandages. The poison had been flushed from his system. Thanks to Isabella's quick thinking and Marcus's antidotes, Isabella sat by his bedside, changing the dressing on his shoulder. Her hands lingered on his skin. He was warm again. Kael's eyes fluttered open. He looked at the ceiling, then at her. You're still here, he whispered. His voice was rough, like gravel. Where else would I go? Isabella asked softly. She dipped a cloth in cool water and dapped his forehead. You took a dart for me. Kael, that was aimed at my jugular. I told you, Kael said, his eyes tracking her hand. I protect what's mine. I'm still mad at you, Isabella said, though her voice lacked heat. About the car, about the lies. I know. Kael reached up, his hand weak but steady, and cupped her cheek. His thumb brushed her lower lip. Be mad. Hate me if you have to. Just stay alive. Isabella leaned into his touch. It was involuntary. Her body recognized him even if her mind was fighting it. Why is everyone trying to kill us? Kael. Because change terrifies people, he murmured, and you are the biggest change this world has seen in 300 years. The door opened. Elder Vera walked in, leaning heavily on her cane. She looked frail, but her eyes were sharp. We need to talk, Vera said gravely, about the ritual. Isabella pulled away from Kael, straightening her posture. Is Asher okay? The boy is fine for now, Vera said, but his 8th birthday is in 10 weeks. The poison Victor used accelerated the curse. We don't have 10 weeks. We have maybe 10 days. Kale tried to sit up, groaning, "What do we need?" Vera placed an old leather-bound book, the grimoire, on the bedside table. She opened it to a page marked with dried blood. "The blood moon ritual," Vera explained. "It requires 3 things to break the curse permanently. First, the blood of a thorn descendant." "We have Isabella," Kale said. "Second, the acceptance of the cursed child." "Asher trusts her." Kale nodded. "What's the third?" Vera hesitated. She looked at Isabella with pity. "The sacrifice of the one the spellcaster loves most." The room went deadly silent. "What?" Isabella whispered. I don't have anyone. My sister is dead. My parents are gone." Vera looked at Kale, then back at Isabella. "Are you sure about that, child? The magic doesn't lie. It demands a heart for a heart." Isabella looked at Kale. She saw the concern in his gray eyes. She remembered the way he held her after the crash, the way he jumped in front of a poisoned dart without hesitation, the way her heart beat in sync with his during the transfusion. "Oh no," she thought, "I love him." Kale saw the realization in her eyes. His face hardened. "No," Kale growled. He swung his legs out of bed, ignoring the pain. "Absolutely not. We find another way." "There is no other way. Alpha," Vera snapped. "It's the prophecy." "Then the prophecy can go to hell," Kale roared. He stood up, swaying slightly. "I will not let her die for me. I will not trade her life for Asher's." "It's not your choice," Isabella shouted, standing up to face him. "If it saves Asher, I'll do it." "You will not." Kale grabbed her shoulders. "Do you understand? I forbid it." "You aren't my master, Kale." "I am your—" He cut himself off, mate. He almost said it. From the hallway, a small gasp was heard. They all turned. Asher was standing there, clutching his stuffed wolf. He had heard everything. "You have to die," Asher whispered, looking at Isabella, "to save me." "Asher, baby, wait," Isabella started. "No," Asher screamed. "I don't want it. I won't let you die like Mommy." The boy turned and ran. He was fast, wolf fast. "Asher!" Kale shouted. He tried to run, but his injury slowed him down. He stumbled. Isabella didn't stumble. She sprinted past Kale, out the door, and down the corridor. "I've got him." She chased him out of the fortress and into the snow. "Asher, stop!" Isabella screamed. The boy was heading for the frozen lake, the same place Kyle said his mother had died. The ice was thin this time of year, treacherous and shifting. "Go away!" Asher yelled back, running onto the white expanse. "If I run away, the curse goes with me. You can stay safe." "It doesn't work like that." Isabella stepped onto the ice. It groaned beneath her boots. "Asher, please, come back." Asher reached the middle of the lake. He stopped, his small chest heaving. "I'm not worth it," he sobbed. "I'm just a curse." "You are everything," Isabella said, inching closer. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." She was 5 feet away. She reached out her hand. Asher took a step toward her. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. The ice beneath Asher shattered. He didn't even have time to scream. He just dropped into the black water. "Asher." Isabella didn't think. She didn't weigh the risks. She dove. The water hit her like 1,000 knives. It was paralyzingly cold. It was dark, murky, and disorienting. She kicked down, her eyes stinging. She saw him, a small, pale shape sinking into the gloom. The current was pulling him away. Isabella swam harder, her lungs burning. She grabbed his wrist. She pulled him close. She kicked upward, breaking the surface. "I've got you," she gasped. Treading water, she shoved Asher onto a thick sheet of ice that hadn't broken. Climb, crawl away. Asher scrambled onto the ice, coughing up water. "Bella, come on." Isabella tried to pull herself up, but her wet clothes were heavy, her limbs were numb, and the edge of the ice kept breaking under her weight. She slipped back under. "Bella!" Asher screamed. Darkness closed over her head. Her strength was gone. The cold was putting her to sleep. Then, a splash. Strong arms wrapped around her waist. Kael. He hauled her to the surface, then threw her onto the solid ice next to Asher. He pulled himself up with a roar of effort. Isabella lay on the ice, blue-lipped and shivering violently. She wasn't breathing. "No, no, no," Kael chanted. He ripped her wet sweater open. He started compressions. "Come back to me. Do not leave me. Isabella. 1, 2, 3, breathe." He tilted her head back and covered her mouth with his. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a transfer of life. He pushed air into her lungs. "Come on," Kael shouted, hitting her chest. "Fight." Isabella coughed, water expelled from her lungs. She gasped, sucking in the freezing air. Kael collapsed over her, burying his face in her neck. He was shaking. The big, invincible alpha was shaking uncontrollably. "I've got you," he sobbed into her skin. "I've got you." Isabella wrapped her frozen arms around him. "I'm okay," she chattered. "I'm here." But as she looked over Kael's shoulder, through the driving snow, she saw something move in the tree line. Not one wolf, hundreds. Red eyes glowing in the dark. The winter pack had arrived. Isabella woke up to the sound of sirens. She was back in the fortress, wrapped in heated blankets, but the peace was gone. The fortress was vibrating. The deep, rhythmic thumping of war drums echoed from outside the walls. She sat up. Kael was standing by the window, fully armored in tactical gear. He looked like a god of war, grim, lethal, and terrifying. "What's happening?" Isabella asked, her voice hoarse. Kael turned. His expression softened momentarily when he saw her awake, but the tension remained in his jaw. "Siege," he said simply. "The winter pack and 4 others. They've surrounded the mountain." "Why?" "They want you, Isabella." Isabella threw the blankets off. She felt weak, but adrenaline was a powerful stimulant. "Me? Why me?" "Because word got out," Kael said, walking over to hand her a cup of hot herbal tea. "They know about your blood. They say the Thorn bloodline is too dangerous to exist. They claim you're a witch who will destroy us all." "I'm a nurse." "To them, you are a weapon. Garrett, the alpha of the winter pack, is demanding I hand you over for execution. If I do, they leave." Isabella froze. She looked at the cup in her hands. "If you give me up, the war stops." "Yes." "And Asher?" "Without you. Asher dies of the curse in a week," Kael said bluntly. "But the pack would be safe." Isabella stood up. She walked to the window, below, in the valley. She saw thousands of torches. It was an army. "I'll go," she whispered. Kael grabbed her arm. He spun her around. So fast tea spilled onto the floor. "What did you say?" he growled. "I said I'll go," Isabella said, meeting his furious gaze. "I won't let your people die for me. I won't let a war start because of me." "You think I'm going to let you walk out there and be slaughtered?" Kael laughed, a harsh, dark sound. "You clearly don't understand how this works." "How what works? You're the alpha. Your job is to protect the pack." "My job is to protect my mate," Kael roared. The word hung in the air, heavy, absolute. Isabella blinked. "You're what?" Kael stared at her, his chest heaving. He seemed to realize what he had just admitted. He stepped closer, crowding her against the window glass. "My mate," he repeated, his voice dropping to a husky whisper that vibrated in her bones. "My wolf claimed you the moment we met in that cabin. Why do you think I can't stay away from you? Why do you think I took that dart? Why do you think I breathe for you?" He took her hand and placed it over his heart. It was hammering against his ribs. "You are mine, Isabella, and I am yours. If they want you, they have to burn this mountain down and step over my corpse." Isabella looked at him. The fear melted away. In its place was a fierce, burning resolve. "Okay," she whispered. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was brief, hard, and tasted of desperation. "Then we fight." They didn't wait for the attack. Cale opened the gates. He walked out onto the snow-covered bridge. Flanked by his warriors, Isabella walked right beside him. She refused to hide. If they wanted the witch, they would get her. Alpha Garrett stood at the head of the enemy army. He was older than Cale, scarred and brutal-looking, wearing the pelt of a white bear. "Donovan," Garrett shouted, "hand over the witch. This is your last warning." Cale didn't shout. He projected his voice with alpha command. "There is no witch here, only my mate, and the future Queen of Moonstone." A gasp rippled through the enemy ranks. An alpha mating a human, a Thorn descendant, was heresy. "Then you die with her." Garrett spat. He raised his hand to signal the charge. "Wait." Isabella stepped forward. "Isabella, get back," Cale warned, his claws extending. "Garrett," Isabella shouted, her voice clear in the cold air. "Why are you doing this? Really? You brought 5 packs to kill 1 woman." Garrett sneered. "You are a curse. Your blood poisons our world." "Or," Isabella said, taking a gamble on a hunch she'd had looking at Garrett's aura, "you need something. You're desperate. I can smell the sickness on you. Garrett, not yours, but someone close to you." Garrett froze. His hand lowered slightly. "My daughter," Garrett snarled, his voice cracking. "Freya, she is 6 years old. She is dying. The healers can't do anything." Isabella took a step forward, ignoring Cale's growl of protest. "Let me guess. Fevers, convulsions, black veins." Garrett's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "Because it's the same curse," Isabella said. "Morgana didn't just curse Kael's line. She cursed everyone who betrayed her family. Your daughter is dying of the same thing Asher has." Garrett looked at Kael, then back at Isabella. The anger drained out of him, leaving only a father's terror. "Can you save her?" Garrett whispered. "I can try," Isabella said, "but not if we're killing each other." Garrett looked at his army. He looked at the fortress. He threw his weapon into the snow. "Stand down," Garrett ordered his troops. "Let her through." The war became a waiting room. Garrett's daughter, Freya, was brought into the fortress. She was tiny, frail, and indeed, suffering from the exact same magical decay as Asher. Isabella worked for hours. She used the transfusion technique again, but this time, she felt stronger. Her body was adapting to the magic. When Freya woke up, color returning to her cheeks, Garrett fell to his knees and wept. The alliance was forged not in blood, but in healing. That night, Kael, Isabella, Garrett, and Vera sat in the war room. The mood was different now, hopeful. "The curse is wider than we thought," Vera admitted. Thumbing through the grimoire, it targets alpha bloodlines across the continent. "So if I break it for Asher," Isabella asked, "does it break for everyone?" "The ritual needs to be amplified," Vera said. "One Thorn descendant isn't enough to shatter a curse of this magnitude. We need a catalyst, or more blood." "I'm the last one," Isabella said. Sienna confirmed it. The others were murdered. "Wait," Asher said. The boy had snuck into the room again. He was holding the grimoire which Vera had left on the table. He had placed his hand on the back cover. "It's hot," Asher said. Isabella walked over. "The book." "No, the map inside." Asher opened the book to the very last page. It was blank parchment, but when Asher's hand touched it and then Isabella's hand covered his ink, began to bleed onto the page. It was a map of the current room. 3 glowing dots appeared. One was Isabella, one was unknown. "There's another one," Isabella whispered. "Here, in this room." Cale stood up. Garrett stood up. Everyone looked around suspiciously. "Who?" Cale demanded. The dot on the map moved. It drifted toward the corner of the room, toward Dr. Marcus Reed. The room went silent. Marcus stopped polishing his glasses. He looked up, his face unreadable. "Marcus," Cale asked, his voice low, "you've been my pack doctor for 10 years. Marcus sighed. He placed his glasses on the table. He didn't look like a nervous doctor anymore. He looked tired and dangerous. "My mother's maiden name was Thorne," Marcus said quietly. "She changed it to survive. I joined your pack to hide in plain sight." "Hide from who?" Isabella asked. "From the people who are actually hunting us," Marcus said. He looked at Vera. His eyes were cold. "Tell them. Vera, tell them about the broken circle." Vera's face went pale. "The who?" Cale asked. "The society that kills Thorne descendants," Marcus said. "The ones who killed Isabella's sister, the ones who hired Victor." He pointed a finger at Vera. "And she has been their spy the entire time." The silence in the war room was absolute, broken only by the crackling of the holographic map. Marcus stood in the center of the room, his hands raised in surrender. Every guard had their weapon trained on him. Cale looked ready to tear his throat out. "Explain," Cale snarled, his voice vibrating with restrained violence, "before I separate your head from your body." "I didn't know about the broken circle until recently," Marcus said quickly, sweat beading on his brow. "I knew my mother ran from something. She told me to hide my blood. She told me the Alphas were the enemy." "So you infiltrated my pack to kill us." Cale stepped forward, claws extending. "To destroy the system," Marcus argued, not backing down. "But then, I met Asher. I delivered him. I treated his scraped knees. I watched him grow up." Marcus looked at Isabella. "I couldn't hurt a child. That's why I stayed, to sabotage the circle from the inside if they ever came for him." "And Vera," Isabella asked, stepping between Cale and the doctor, "you said she's the spy." Everyone turned to look at the elder's chair. It was empty. The heavy oak door to the war room was swinging slightly. "She ran," Garrett growled. "Coward." "She didn't run," Marcus corrected grimly. "She's going to finish the job." The search for the remaining descendants became a race against the clock. With the map in the grimoire activated, they had locations. The first dot was in Seattle. Isabella, Cale, and Sienna took the fastest jet in the pack's fleet. They found Luna Park working the espresso machine at a busy coffee shop near Pike Place Market. She was 22, with blue hair and a "don't talk to me" attitude. When Cale walked in, filling the doorway with his massive frame, the shop went quiet. "Can I help you?" Luna popped her gum, unimpressed. "Luna Park," Isabella said, stepping forward. "We need you to come with us. It's a matter of life and death." Luna snorted. "Lady, unless you're the health inspector, I'm busy." Sienna didn't have time for pleasantries. She flicked her wrist. The espresso machine behind Luna exploded in a shower of steam and sparks, but the steam formed a perfect, swirling wolf head in the air. Luna dropped her pitcher. She stared at the steam, then at her own hands, which were suddenly glowing with a faint, answering light. "Okay," Luna squeaked. "I take my break now." The second dot led them to a cemetery in Portland. It was pouring rain. Cale held a black umbrella over Isabella as they stood before a fresh grave. "James Thorne, beloved son, died October 14th. "We're too late," Isabella whispered, touching the cold marble. "No," Cale said. Kneeling in the mud, he sniffed the air. There's no scent of decay here, no body. He dug his claws into the earth with supernatural strength. He didn't need a shovel. He tore through the soil until he hit the coffin lid. He ripped it open. Empty. Inside, there was only a silver dagger driven into the velvet lining. Wrapped around the handle was a note. Isabella picked it up. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned script. The curse must live. They didn't kill him, Isabella realized. A chill running down her spine that had nothing to do with the rain. They took him, just like they planned to take me. Who benefits, can't? Cale asked, standing up and wiping the mud from his hands. Who benefits from alphas being weak, from heirs dying young? The broken circle, Marcus said from the car, rolling down the window. Think about it. Alpha. If lineages die out, packs become unstable, alphas lose power. Councils and betas gain control. It's a revolution disguised as a curse. Isabella looked at the empty grave. We need to get back to the fortress. Now. They returned to Moonstone on the eve of Asher's 8th birthday. The mood should have been celebratory. Instead, it was like waiting for a bomb to detonate. The fortress was on high alert. Luna had been placed in a safe room, guarded by Garrett's best warriors. Isabella went to check on Asher. It was 11:50 p.m. He was sitting up in bed, clutching his chest. "Bella," he gasped when she entered. "It burns." "I know, baby, I know." She rushed to his side, placing her hands on his face. She tried to push healing energy into him, but something blocked her. A wall of dark static. "It's too early," she panicked. "Midnight. He turns 8 at midnight." The clock on the wall ticked. 11:58, 11:59. Asher screamed. It wasn't a child's scream. It was a sound of pure, magical agony. His back arched. The black veins returned, exploding across his skin instantly, turning his eyes entirely black. "Get everyone!" Isabella shouted to the guards. "We have to do the ritual now." Cale burst into the room, followed by Marcus and Sienna. "Where is Luna?" Marcus yelled. "We need all 3 descendants." "She's in the safe room," Cale said. "Alpha." A warrior stumbled into the doorway, blood streaming from his head. "The safe room. It's empty. They took her." Isabella's phone buzzed. A single text message, a video file. She pressed play. Her hands shook so hard she almost dropped the device. The video showed a dark, ruinous hall lit by candles. Luna was tied to a pillar, gagged, her eyes wide with terror. A figure stepped into the frame, Elder Vera. She looked different, younger, her skin smooth, fueled by stolen magic. "Happy birthday, Asher," Vera purred into the camera. "Midnight," Vera said. "The ruins of the old Thorn Manor. Come alone. Isabella. If I see a single wolf, I slit the girl's throat, and then I let the boy rot." Isabella looked at Asher, who was convulsing on the bed. "I have to go," she said. "No." Cale grabbed her arm. "It's a trap. You walk in there, she kills you both." "If I don't go, Asher dies in 10 minutes. Isabella ripped her arm free. Tears streamed down her face. "I love him. Cale, I won't let him die." Cale looked at her. The desperation in her eyes matched his own. "We do this my way," Cale said. His voice was cold steel. "You go in alone. You buy us time. But I am going to surround that manor with every wolf I have. And when the moment comes, we turn it into a graveyard." The old Thorn Manor was a skeleton of stone on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Isabella walked through the front gates alone. The wind whipped her hair across her face, carrying the scent of salt and ancient magic. She wore a wire concealed in her jacket. Cale was listening. Every heartbeat, every breath. "I'm here!" she shouted into the dark ruins. Candlelight flickered in the remains of the grand hall. Vera sat on a throne made of rubble, looking regal and terrifying. Luna was chained beside her, unconscious. You have courage, Vera said. Standing up, she moved with a fluid grace that was unnatural for a woman of 80, just like Morgana. You talk about her like you knew her, Isabella said, stepping closer, keeping her hands visible. I did, Vera smiled. I was the one who drove the dagger into her heart 300 years ago. Isabella froze. That's impossible. Is it? Vera laughed. The curse Morgana cast, it was fueled by hate, but it was bound by blood. When I killed her, some of that magic transferred to me. As long as the curse lives, I live. I stop aging. I stop dying. You kept the curse active, Isabella realized, horror dawning on her. For 300 years, you killed children to stay young. Immortality is addictive, my dear, Vera caressed Luna's hair, but maintaining it requires fuel. Alpha sons are good, but thorn blood, that is the premium vintage. Vera snapped her fingers. From the shadows, 2 more figures were dragged out by cloaked mercenaries. A man and a woman, pale, weak, with IV lines in their arms. James Thorne, Isabella breathed. And Sophie. The dead descendants, Vera confirmed. I didn't kill them. I kept them, like cattle, drawing just enough blood to feed the spell, keeping them just barely alive. She looked at Isabella hungrily. And you're the strongest of them all, the hybrid. Your blood will give me another 1,000 years. Kale, Isabella screamed. Now! The walls of the manor exploded inward. Wolves didn't use doors. Kale led the charge, a massive black beast crashing through the stone. Garrett was right beside him, the white werewolf tearing through mercenaries like paper. Kill them all! Vera shrieked. She raised her hands, and purple lightning crackled from her fingertips. The battle was chaotic. The mercenaries were heavily armed with silver bullets, but the wolves were fueled by desperation. Kale lunged for Vera. She simply waved her hand. A blast of kinetic energy hit Kale mid-air, slamming him into a stone pillar with bone-crushing force. He fell, shifting back to human form, coughing blood. Kale, Isabella ran toward him. Vera tutted. She clenched her fist. Isabella stopped. Invisible chains wrapped around her throat. Lifting her off the ground, she kicked uselessly, clawing at the air. You brought wolves to a witch fight, Vera sneered. She walked over to Isabella, pulling a jagged obsidian knife from her robes. Poor choice. Across the room, Luna, James, and Sophie were huddled together, terrified. The ritual, Marcus shouted from the entryway, fighting off 2 guards. Isabella, you have to finish the ritual. Use the blood in the room. Isabella was choking. Black spots danced in her vision. The sacrifice, the grimoire had said. The sacrifice of the one you love most. She looked at Kale. He was trying to crawl toward her, his legs broken, his eyes burning with helpless rage. She looked at the phone on the floor, displaying Asher's vitals, flatlining. She realized then what the prophecy meant. It wasn't about death. It wasn't about Kael dying. It was about her. To break a curse made of hate, she needed power that a human body couldn't hold. She had to sacrifice her humanity. She had to accept the monster within. She had to become what they feared. Isabella stopped fighting the chokehold. She closed her eyes. She reached deep inside herself, past the fear, past the nurse, past the human woman. She found the green fire of the magic that had saved Asher. And she pulled the trigger. I accept, Isabella whispered. Her eyes snapped open. They weren't brown anymore. They weren't even wolf gold. They were emerald fire. The air in the manor dropped 50 degrees. The candles blew out. Vera stopped. She looked at Isabella, confusion flickering in her eyes. What are you doing? Ending you, Isabella said. Her voice sounded like it was spoken by 3 people at once. Isabella screamed. A shockwave of pure green energy exploded from her body. It shattered the invisible chains. It threw Vera backward across the room. It cracked the stone foundation of the manor. Isabella dropped to the floor, but she didn't fall. She hovered. Her hair floated around her face as if she were underwater. She looked at her hands. Talons made of pure light extended from her fingertips. She felt the wolf spirit inside her and the witch spirit fusing together. The hybrid wasn't a myth anymore. It was born. Vera scrambled to her feet, looking terrified for the first time in centuries. No, that power, it belongs to me. She threw a bolt of lightning at Isabella. Isabella simply caught it. She caught the lightning in her bare hand and crushed it. You stole 300 years, Isabella said, gliding toward Vera. Time to give them back. She grabbed Vera by the face. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Isabella channeled the collective pain of every cursed child, every grieving mother, every dead alpha heir. She poured it all into Vera. Vera screamed as her skin began to wither. Her hair turned to dust. Her body aged decades in seconds. The stolen immortality drained out of her, flowing into the air, dissipating like smoke. Asher, Isabella commanded, her voice booming. Live! The green energy surged outward from the manor, racing across the miles, finding the fortress, finding the boy. Back at Moonstone, Asher gasped, his back arched, the black veins turned white, then gold, then vanished. He took a deep, healthy breath. At the manor, Vera was nothing more than a skeleton wrapped in rags. She crumbled to ash in Isabella's grip. Silence fell over the ruins. The wolves stopped fighting. The mercenaries fled. Cale pulled himself up against a pillar, healing slowly. He stared at Isabella. She stood in the center of the room, glowing, powerful, and terrifying. The magic swirled around her, reluctant to let go. Isabella, Cale whispered. She turned to look at him. The emerald fire in her eyes faded, slowly returning to brown. She collapsed to her knees, the power leaving her in a rush. She was just a woman again, a woman covered in soot and sweat, weeping on the floor. Cale dragged himself to her. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into his chest. You did it, he choked out. You broke it. He's alive. I can feel him. Isabella sobbed, clutching Cale's shirt. I didn't want to be a monster. I just wanted to save him. You're not a monster. Cale kissed the top of her head, over and over. You're a miracle. But as they held each other in the wreckage, a cold wind blew through the ruins. From the pile of ash that used to be Vera, a dark shadow rose. It wasn't a ghost. It was a message, a recording, triggered by death. A voice, deeper and darker than Vera's, echoed through the stones. So, the little nurse killed my puppet. Impressive. Isabella looked up. Cale growled. The shadow formed the silhouette of a woman with long flowing hair and eyes like voids. Vera was just the jailer. The voice crooned. I am the prison. You broke the lock, Isabella. And now, everything I kept inside is coming out. The shadow laughed and dissolved into the night. Isabella shivered. The curse was gone, but something worse had just woken up. Who was that? Garrett asked, stepping forward, his sword drawn. Isabella looked at the spot where the shadow had been. She felt a tug in her blood, a recognition. That, Isabella whispered, was Morgana's sister. Isabella didn't wake up. She came online. It was the only way to describe it. There was no grogginess, no blinking away sleep. Her eyes snapped open, and instantly, she knew exactly how many people were in the fortress. She could hear heartbeats. Not just the thumping in her own chest, but the rhythmic drumming of hundreds of hearts. She could distinguish them. Asher's fluttery, excited rhythm down the hall. Cale's slow, powerful, tectonic thudding 2 rooms away. She sat up. The sheets felt abrasive against her skin. The air smelled, but she could smell the ozone of the storm outside, the iron in the blood of the healing warriors, and the distinct spicy scent of Kael's anxiety. She walked to the mirror. The woman staring back was Isabella, but sharpened. Her brown eyes now had a permanent ring of emerald green around the iris. Her movements were fluid, liquid, too fast for a human. "Hybrid," she whispered. The word vibrated in the air, carrying a faint hum of power. The door opened. Kael stood there. He looked exhausted, his arm in a sling, but his eyes lit up when he saw her standing. "You're up," he said, relief washing over him. He took a step forward, then stopped. Isabella saw it, a micro flinch. "You're afraid of me," she stated. It wasn't a question. She could smell the spike of cortisol in his sweat. "I'm not afraid of you," Kael corrected, closing the door. "I'm afraid for you, and I am in awe of you. There is a difference." He walked over. Ignoring his own instincts to be cautious, he stopped inches from her. He raised his good hand to touch her face, but hesitated. Isabella reached out and grabbed his hand, pressing it against her cheek. "I'm still me, Kael. I'm just more." "You're the first of your kind," Kael murmured, his thumb stroking her skin. "Witch and wolf, the balance Morgana destroyed. You restored." "Is Asher okay?" "He's better than okay. He's outside, playing in the snow. He shifted this morning. Isabella, voluntarily, a full, healthy shift. No pain." Isabella let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Good. Then it was worth it. Later that day, the reality of her new status set in. The fortress was crowded. The rescued descendants Luna, Sophie, and Nathan, who they had found in the grave, barely alive, were recovering in the guest wing, but the atmosphere was tense. As Isabella walked through the mess hall, conversation stopped. Warriors who had sneered at her for being human now lowered their gazes, baring their necks in submission. It wasn't respect, it was terror. She found Marcus in the library with the other descendants. "So," Nathan said, looking at his hands. He was a teenager, skinny and traumatized. "We're the last ones." "We are the beginning," Marcus corrected. He looked at Isabella as she entered. "The matriarch arrives." "Don't call me that," Isabella said. Sitting down, she picked up an apple. She squeezed it slightly, and it exploded into applesauce. She sighed, wiping her hand. "I can't control it. It's like holding a hurricane in a glass jar." "You need a teacher," Marcus said. "But the problem is, no one has ever been what you are. We are uncharted territory." "We can figure it out," Isabella said. "Together." That night, she couldn't stand the walls. She climbed up to the flat roof of the fortress's highest tower. The wind was howling, but the cold didn't bother her anymore. Her internal temperature ran hot, like a wolf's. She wasn't alone for long. Kael joined her. He didn't say anything, just leaned against the parapet beside her, looking out at the moonlit peaks. "You're avoiding me," Kael said after a long silence. "I'm avoiding everyone," Isabella replied. "I can hear their thoughts. Kael, not telepathy, but I can smell their judgment. They think I'm going to turn into Vera. They think I'm a ticking bomb. Let them think what they want. They're alive because of you." Kael turned to face her. The moonlight caught the sharp angles of his face. He looked less like a king and more like a man who had found his religion. "Isabella," he said softly, "we need to talk about us." "Is there an us?" Isabella asked, looking away. "The curse is broken. The prophecy is fulfilled. You don't have to pretend anymore." Kael let out a frustrated growl. He grabbed her waist, spinning her around and pinning her against the stone wall. It was the same move he'd made a dozen times, but this time, Isabella didn't feel overpowered. She felt equal. "Stop saying that," Kael hissed. Stop saying I'm pretending. You kidnapped me. You crashed my car. You manipulated every moment of our meeting. Yes, Cale admitted, and I hate myself for it every day, but you need to know the truth. He leaned his forehead against hers. I didn't know you were my mate because of the blood test, Isabella. I didn't know because of the prophecy. Then how? The moment I walked into that cabin, Cale whispered, his voice raw. The moment I smelled your blood on the snow. My wolf didn't want to kill you. He wanted to fall at your feet. I fought it. I told myself it was just the mission. But when you touched Asher, when you looked at me with that fire in your eyes, I knew. Isabella stared at him. You knew. I knew you were the one I had been waiting for my entire life, and it terrified me, because I knew I had to lie to you to save my son. I had to break your trust to keep you. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a confession. It was hungry, desperate, and filled with all the words he couldn't say. Isabella stiffened for a second, then melted. She wrapped her arms around his neck, tangling her fingers in his hair. Her magic reacted to his touch, sending sparks of green light dancing across their skin. Cale groaned, pulling her closer, lifting her until her feet left the ground. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I don't care if you're a hybrid or a monster or a goddess. I love you. Isabella pulled back, breathless. I want to believe you, Cale. God, I want to. Then believe this, Cale said. If you leave tonight, I will follow you, not as an alpha, just as a man. Before Isabella could answer, the heavy steel door to the roof banged open. Sienna burst out, clutching a scroll. Her face was pale as the snow. Alpha Isabella, Sienna shouted. We have a problem, a massive problem. Cale didn't let go of Isabella, but he turned his head. This better be good. Sienna. Vera wasn't just keeping herself alive. Sienna gasped. I translated her final journal, the immortality spell. It acted as a lock. A lock for what? Isabella asked, sensing the dread in the witch's voice. For her sister, Sienna said. Ravenna Thorn, the dangerous one. Vera kept her in magical stasis for 300 years because she knew if Ravenna woke up, she would burn the world down. Sienna looked at Isabella. When you killed Vera, you broke the lock. Ravenna is awake, and she's coming for you. The dream started that night. Isabella wasn't standing in the fortress. She was standing in a field of black roses, under a sky the color of bruised violets. A woman stood in the center of the field. She looked like Isabella, but sharper, silver-white hair that flowed like water, eyes as black as the void. Ravenna. Hello, little niece. Ravenna smiled. Her voice wasn't scary. It was warm, like honey poured over gravel. Get out of my head, Isabella said, summoning her green fire. Peace, child. Ravenna waved a hand, and the fire turned into butterflies. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to thank you. You freed me from my sister's jealousy. Ravenna walked closer. She touched Isabella's chin. Her touch felt like ice. They fear you, don't they? Ravenna whispered. The wolves. I can feel your insecurity. You sleep in the fortress, but you keep one eye open. You know they whisper about you. They're my family, Isabella said defensively. They are your captors, Ravenna corrected gently. Wolves consume. Isabella, that is their nature. They take what they want and destroy what they don't understand. Look at history. Look at what they did to Morgana. Look at what they did to others. I'm not listening to you. You will. Ravenna faded away, her smile lingering like a scar in the air. Ask your alpha about the clean slate protocol. Ask him about Emily. Isabella woke up screaming. By noon, the paranoia in the fortress was palpable. Ravenna's presence was leaking into the real world. Shadows seemed longer. The air was colder. Cale tried to keep order, but the Council of Elders, now led by Marcus, who had resumed his role but was watched closely, was demanding action. Isabella is a beacon, Elder Thomas argued in the war room. Her magic calls to Ravenna. If she stays here, she brings the war to our doorstep. She is the war. Cale slammed his fist down. She is the only one powerful enough to stop Ravenna. Isabella stood in the corner, listening. She could hear their heartbeats speeding up when they looked at her. Fear, disgust. We need to test her, Marin suggested. We need to know if she can control her dark side. If Ravenna influences her, we need to know. A test. Isabella stepped forward. Fine, test me. They took her to the training grounds. They brought out a captured rogue wolf, a feral creature that had been attacking the perimeter. Subdue him, Marin ordered, without killing him. The rogue lunged. Isabella raised her hand to create a shield, but as the wolf snarled, she saw Ravenna's face in her mind. She heard the whispers. They hate you. They want you to fail. Her instinct spiked. Instead of a shield, a lash of green energy whipped out. It hit the rogue. There was no sound of impact. The wolf just unraveled. Flesh, bone, and fur turned to ash in a split second. Silence fell over the training ground. Isabella stared at the pile of ash. She looked at her hands. They were shaking. She looked up. The warriors were backing away. Even Marin looked horrified. And Cale? Cale looked terrified. Not of the rogue, of her. I didn't mean to, Isabella whispered. Secure her to her quarters, Marin ordered the guards, until we figure this out. No, Cale stepped in. She stays with me. But the damage was done. Isabella saw the look in their eyes. She was the monster now. That evening, Isabella sat in Cale's office. She was numb. Cale poured her a drink. His hand brushed hers, but she pulled away. Ask him, Ravenna's voice echoed in her mind. Ask him about Emily. Kyle, Isabella said quietly, what is the clean slate protocol? Cale dropped the glass. It shattered on the floor, whiskey pooling around his boots. The silence that followed was louder than the crash. Where did you hear that name? Kyle asked. His voice was tight, guarded. It doesn't matter. Tell me. Cale turned away, looking out the window at the falling snow. His shoulders slumped, the posture of a defeated man. 2 years ago, Cale began. Before we found you, we found another signature, a strong one, in Portland. Isabella's heart stopped. My sister, Emily. We didn't know she was your sister then. We just knew she was a descendant, but she was unstable. Her magic was leaking. She caused a fire in her apartment building. Humans were asking questions. Cale turned to face her. His eyes were wet. The council activated the clean slate protocol. It's a containment measure. If a magical asset becomes a liability to the secrecy of our world, they are neutralized. Isabella stood up. The room began to shake. Books fell off the shelves. Neutralized, she whispered. You mean murdered? I didn't order it, Cale pleaded, stepping toward her. I tried to stop it. I sent a team to extract her, to save her. But the clean slate team got there first. They ran her car off the road. You, Isabella choked. Your pack killed my sister. It was the old Council Vera's men. I purged them after. But you knew, Isabella screamed. The windows blew out. Glass sprayed across the room. Green fire erupted from Isabella's skin. It wasn't warm, healing light anymore. It was cold, destructive flame. You knew when you met me, she accused, tears streaming down her face. You knew when you crashed my car. You knew when you kissed me. You let me fall in love with the people who murdered my sister. Isabella, please. Cale fell to his knees. The mighty Alpha begged. I wanted to tell you. I was a coward. I didn't want to lose you. You never had me. Isabella said. Her voice was dead. Isabella. A new voice. Ravenna stood in the doorway. She wasn't a dream this time. She was there, in the flesh, wearing a long velvet coat. She looked at the shattered room, at the kneeling Alpha, and smiled. I told you, niece, Ravenna said softly. Wolves only know how to destroy. Isabella looked at Cale. She looked at the man she loved, the man who saved her life, the man whose silence had been a lie all along. Then she looked at Ravenna, the monster the world feared, the only one who had told her the truth. Teach me, Isabella said to Ravenna. No, Cale roared. He tried to stand, but Isabella flicked her wrist. A wall of green force slammed him back against the wall and held him there. Isabella, don't do this. Cale struggled against the magic. She will twist you. She will make you a weapon. I'm already a weapon, Cale, Isabella said coldly. You made me one. She walked over to the desk. She picked up a picture frame, a photo of her, Cale, and Asher building a snowman. She crushed it in her hand. Where are we going? Isabella asked Ravenna. Home, Ravenna said, extending a hand, to the Blackthorn Keep, where we don't hide our power, we sharpen it. Isabella took Ravenna's hand. As they walked out into the hallway, Asher ran around the corner. He stopped, holding his stuffed wolf, his eyes wide. Bella, Asher whispered, where are you going? Isabella stopped. The green fire in her eyes dimmed for a second. She looked at the boy who held her heart. I have to go away for a while, Asher, she said, her voice breaking. Are you coming back? Isabella looked back at Cale, pinned to the wall, watching her with broken eyes. I don't know, she whispered. Ravenna swept her cloak around them. Shadows swirled, thick and suffocating. Goodbye, little wolf, Ravenna said to Asher. And then they were gone. Cale dropped to the floor as the magic released him. He scrambled to the spot where Isabella had stood, clawing at the empty air. Isabella! He screamed, a sound of pure agony that echoed through the entire mountain. Asher dropped his toy. He didn't cry. He just stared at the empty space, his face hardening. She left, Asher whispered. The gold in his eyes darkened. She left us. Isabella expected a dungeon. She expected skulls and cauldrons and dark altars. What she got was a university. Blackthorn Keep was nestled deep in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania. It was an architectural marvel of obsidian stone and Gothic spires. But inside, it was warm. It smelled of beeswax, parchment, and lavender. Welcome to Sanctuary, Ravenna said, opening the massive double doors. Isabella walked in, prepared to fight. Instead, she lowered her hands. The main hall was filled with people, not soldiers, families. She saw a group of young witches practicing levitation charms with laughing children. She saw werewolves, rogues, outcasts, the injured sitting at long tables, eating together. She saw vampires reading by the fire. This is your army, Isabella asked, confused. This is my family, Ravenna corrected. She removed her heavy cloak, revealing a simple, elegant dress. The world calls me a monster, Isabella. History is written by the victors, usually the alpha wolves who burn women like us at the stake. I don't want to destroy the world. I want to save the people the world threw away. Isabella walked through the hall. A little girl with wolf ears and a human face ran past her, chasing a floating ball of light. A hybrid, Isabella whispered, like me. There are many like you, Ravenna said softly. Mistakes, abominations. That's what the councils call them. Here, they are just children. Isabella felt the anger in her chest loosen, replaced by a profound sense of sorrow. Cale had called Ravenna the ultimate evil. The history books called her the Black Witch. But looking at this place, it was a refuge. Why did you show me Emily's file? Isabella asked, turning to her aunt. Because you needed to know that the system KL protects is the same system that killed your sister, Ravenna said. KL is not a bad man, Isabella, but he is a king, and kings choose their kingdoms over their hearts, every time. The training began the next morning. Ravenna didn't teach Isabella spells, she taught her control. Your magic is tied to your emotions, Ravenna explained in the courtyard. Wolves are creatures of instinct, witches are creatures of intent. You are both. When you get angry, the wolf pushes the magic out uncontrolled. You must learn to be the dam, not the river. They sparred for weeks. Isabella learned to shift into her wolf form, a sleek, white wolf with green eyes, and use magic while in fur. She learned to heal without draining herself. She learned to fight with telekinesis. But the nights were hard. Every night, she dreamed of Moonstone. She dreamed of Asher crying. She dreamed of Kael standing at the window, watching the snow fall, looking hollowed out. You miss them, Ravenna said one evening, finding Isabella on the battlements. I miss who I thought they were, Isabella lied. Ravenna handed her a tablet. Then you should see this. On the screen was a news report from the Supernatural Underground Network. Moonstone under siege. Again, the Broken Circle claims responsibility for attacks on 3 major pack territories. Alpha Kale Donovan reportedly critically injured in skirmish. Isabella dropped the tablet. Injured? How bad? Bad enough that the vultures are circling, Ravenna said. The Broken Circle isn't just attacking wolves anymore. Isabella, they're attacking everyone. They hit one of my safe houses in Berlin yesterday. Killed 12 children. Isabella's eyes flashed green. Who is leading them? We don't know, but they have inside information. They know patrol routes. They know security codes. Marcus, Isabella whispered. Ravenna raised an eyebrow. The doctor? He's the only one left, Isabella realized, pacing the stone floor. Vera is dead. Victor is dead. Marcus is the only one who knew everything. He played the sympathetic defector, but he's been pulling the strings all along. She turned to Ravenna. I have to go back. Ravenna looked at her niece. She saw the fire, not the uncontrolled rage of weeks ago, but a focused, diamond-hard resolve. You're not going back to join him, Ravenna clarified. You're going back to save him. I'm going back to end this, Isabella said. Are you coming? Ravenna smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. I haven't been to Oregon in 300 years. I suppose I'm due for a vacation. The return to Moonstone was not a stealth mission. It was an invasion. Isabella didn't arrive in a car. She arrived via a portal Ravenna opened directly onto the snowy plains in front of the fortress. And she didn't come alone. Behind her stood Ravenna and 50 of the keep's best warriors, witches, rogues, vampires, a coalition of the unwanted. The Moonstone guards on the walls sounded the alarm. Enemy at the gates. Hold fire, a voice boomed from the battlements. Kael appeared. He looked terrible. His arm was still bandaged, his face gaunt, his beard overgrown. He leaned heavily on the stone railing. He looked down and saw Isabella standing in the snow, wind whipping her hair, looking like an avenging angel. Isabella, he shouted, his voice cracking. Open the gate. Kaelo? Isabella projected her voice with magic. We're not here to fight you. We're here to help you survive what's coming. Kael didn't hesitate. Open it now. As the heavy doors groaned open, Isabella marched in. The pack warriors parted like the Red Sea, terrified of the army behind her. Kael met her in the courtyard. He stumbled slightly as he approached her. He looked at Ravenna with deep distrust, but his eyes were glued to Isabella. You came back, he whispered. He reached for her, then stopped, remembering how they parted. Isabella didn't pull away. She didn't hug him either. She stood her ground. I'm not here for you, Kael, she said firmly. I'm here because Marcus is coming, and he's bringing the entire broken circle to wipe you out. Marcus? Cale blinked. Marcus has been in the infirmary helping the wounded. Has he, Isabella asked, or has he been signaling his friends? Boom! The answer came in the form of an explosion. The infirmary wing of the fortress detonated, fireballed into the sky. Asher, Cale screamed. He was in there with him. Chaos erupted. Warriors from the broken circle poured out of the smoke of the exploded infirmary they had been smuggled in, hiding in supply trucks, waiting for the signal. At the same time, a second army crested the hills surrounding the fortress, hundreds of heavily armed soldiers in tactical gear loaded with silver and wolfsbane. We're surrounded, Garrett shouted, running into the courtyard with his axe. Find Asher, Isabella yelled. She shifted. Her clothes shredded as she transformed into the massive white wolf. She howled, a sound infused with magic that bolstered the morale of every defender in the courtyard. Ravenna didn't shift. She floated upward, her eyes turning black. She raised her hands, and the snow turned into ice spikes, launching them at the incoming soldiers. The Battle of Moonstone had begun. Isabella tore through the burning hallways of the infirmary wing. Her white fur was singed, her paws bloody. Asher, she called out with her mind. Bella. The faint mental cry came from the basement levels. She shifted back to human form. Ignoring her nakedness as she grabbed a lab coat from a dead medic, she sprinted down the stairs. In the boiler room, she found them. Elder Marcus stood by the furnace. He was holding Asher by the scruff of his neck. Asher was dangling over the open flames of the incineration chute. I knew you'd come back. Marcus smiled. He looked different, stronger. He was vibrating with stolen power. The maternal bond is a stubborn thing. Put him down, Marcus, Isabella said, her hands glowing green. You know, I really did like the boy. Marcus sighed. But sentimentality is why alphas fail. You cling to family. I cling to the future. A future built on dead children. A future without kings, Marcus roared. He threw Asher toward the fire. No. Isabella didn't run. She blinked. Teleportation, a skill Ravenna taught her. She appeared in midair, catching Asher just before he hit the flames. She twisted her body, taking the heat on her back, and crashed onto the concrete floor, shielding the boy. Run, Asher, she screamed. Not this time. Marcus raised a gun, not a normal gun, a modified launcher. Thunk. A silver net exploded from the barrel. It wrapped around Isabella and Asher, pinning them to the floor. The silver burned Isabella's skin like acid. Hybrid or not, Marcus sneered, walking over. Silver still hurts. He aimed a pistol at Isabella's head. Goodbye, matriarch. A roar shook the dust from the ceiling. Cale. He didn't use the door. He smashed through the concrete wall from the adjacent tunnel. He was in his wolf form, a gargantuan black beast, foaming at the mouth with berserker rage. He hit Marcus like a freight train. They tumbled across the room. Marcus was strong, magically enhanced, but Cale was fighting for his mate and his son. Cale ripped the gun from Marcus's hand with his teeth. He shifted back to human form, naked, bloodied, and pinned Marcus to the wall by his throat. You touched my son, Cale snarled. Do it, Marcus laughed, blood bubbling on his lips. Kill me. Prove you're the monster we say you are. Cale's claws dug in. He wanted to. Every cell in his body screamed to rip this traitor apart. Cale, stop. Isabella's voice cut through the red haze. She had burned through the net with her magic. She stood up, holding Asher. Don't kill him, Isabella said. Cale looked at her, confused. He tried to burn Asher alive. If you kill him in anger, Isabella said, walking closer, you prove him right. You prove that alphas are just killers. Then what do I do? Cale roared. We let justice decide, Isabella said. She looked at Marcus. And we take his power. She reached out. Ravenna had taught her this too, the reverse of the transfusion. She placed her hand on Marcus's forehead. I take back what you stole, she whispered. Green light flared. Marcus screamed as the stolen alpha power he had been siphoning for years was ripped out of him. He withered, shrinking back into a small, pathetic man. Cale dropped him. Marcus slumped to the floor, unconscious and powerless. Cale looked at Isabella. He was panting, bleeding, wild. You saved me, he whispered. Again. We saved each other, Isabella said. The battle outside ended quickly after Marcus fell. Without their leader's magical coordination, the broken circle forces crumbled against the combined might of the wolves and Ravenna's witches. By dawn, the smoke was clearing. The courtyard was a mess of debris, but the fortress stood. Isabella stood on the steps, looking out at the survivors. Wolves and witches were helping each other bandage wounds. Garrett was shaking hands with a vampire from Ravenna's guard. It was a mess, but it was a start. Cale walked up behind her. He had cleaned up, but he still looked weary. Ravenna is leaving, he said. She says she prefers her gloomy castle. She's allergic to joy. Isabella smiled tiredly. But she'll be back. We have an alliance now, a school exchange program. Witches learning combat, wolves learning control. Cale stood next to her. He didn't touch her. He gave her space. So, he said, looking at his boots, the war is over. The curse is broken. Marcus is in a cell. Yes. Does this mean you're leaving too? Isabella looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear she felt. She looked over at the bench where Asher was sitting. He was laughing, showing Luna a trick with a floating coin. He looked happy, safe. Isabella turned to Cale. I can't leave, she said. Cale's head snapped up. You can't... No. Isabella stepped closer. I have too much work to do. Someone has to teach your stubborn wolves that magic isn't evil. Someone has to run the new hospital wing. And someone has to help you raise that boy. Cale let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He reached for her hands. Isabella, he said, I'm so sorry for Emily, for the lies, for everything. I know, Isabella said, and I'm not saying I forget, but I can't hate you anymore. Cale, I tried. It's exhausting. I will spend every day earning this. Cale vowed. I will rewrite the laws. I will change the council. I will make a world where Emily would have been safe. I know you will, Isabella said, because I'll be right there making sure you do. Cale pulled her into his arms. This time, there was no desperation, just relief and promise. My mate, he whispered into her hair. Your partner, Isabella corrected gently, pulling back to look him in the eye. Cale smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached his eyes. My partner, my queen. He kissed her. And as the sun rose over the snowy peaks of Moonstone, the green fire in Isabella's eyes flared one last time, not in anger, not in battle, but in pure, radiant joy. 20 years later, the Grand Council chamber was full. It wasn't just alphas anymore. There were witches in velvet robes, vampires in suits, even a few fae representatives. At the head of the table sat Cale Donovan. His hair was graying at the temples, but he looked stronger than ever. Beside him sat Isabella. She hadn't aged a day. The hybrid blood kept her timeless. The floor recognizes the representative from Moonstone, Cale announced. A young man stood up. He was tall, with black hair and striking gold eyes. He wore the Alpha insignia, but he also wore a pendant of obsidian, the mark of a magic user. Asher Donovan, the first Wolf Mage Alpha. Thank you, Father, Asher said, his voice commanding the room. I propose the ratification of the Thorn Accords. Total integration of magical education in all Pact territories. Isabella watched her son speak. She felt a squeeze on her hand. She looked down. A girl, maybe 16, was sitting beside her. She had Kail's black hair and Isabella's green eyes. He's doing good, Mom, Emily whispered. He is, Isabella smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. Do you think I'll ever be that good? Emily asked. Being a hybrid is a lot. You don't have to be that good, Isabella whispered back. You just have to be you. That's what we fought for. The right to be exactly who we are. Isabella looked around the room. She saw Ravenna nodding from the witch delegation. She saw Garrett arguing playfully with Luna. She thought back to that night in the snow, the car crash, the dying boy, the monster at the door. It had been a curse, a tragedy, a mistake. But looking at her family, her strange, broken, beautiful, mixed-up family, she knew the truth. It was the best thing that ever happened to the world.